Good morning, this is Jody at Northern Country Creations, and I've got a video that I want to share my progress on it is a vintage retro 50s recipe keeper junk journal recipe book. I've seen it called many different ways, but this is what it looks like. It's just one of these. I picked up at a yard sale or garage sale or thrift store. I don't remember where I got them, but I have two of them. But this is what it originally looks like. Excuse me. And this is my progress so far. So this is a pamphlet page. So this is where I'm at. This page here, as you can see, this is where the edge of the booklet was. So it was basically just like one of these. It was just a little recipe, like a booklet. These are some vintage ones that I picked up. So it was kind of just like that. Let's just try to see here. So yeah, I mean, it was like, something like this. It's just a little recipe doodad there. So I took the cover off, and this is, you can see where the staple was here and here. So I laid it out and I Mod Podged it onto the cover, and I went around the cover and I put another layer on top to seal it, so it's all sealed. And it had this great little heading, favorite recipes for country kitchens, and it has a lady with a striped, dress on with the apron, and the daughter, and she's ringing the dinner bell, and here comes the father and grandfather and son coming up from the farm to eat. So I just thought this was a great, would be a great cover. So, and then I added the rickrack. So that is where I'm at so far. And then, so the inside of it was like this. It just had, just some pictures, and then, the weights and measures type stuff. And so, and it was black. And so I really didn't want the black. So I found some book pages, some vintage book pages. All of my journals are made with vintage book pages in vintage types of papers. I don't use any printable digital items at all. All my journals are true junk journals. So I took some vintage pages. So I thought this one was really cool. It's handsome tools for backyard chefs, equipment that you'll need, and it's kind of, got campfire roundup, all set for carry along. Look at those old, the tin type cooler cookers, and I just love that. And then the back is a cake baker's art, measuring, so like dry measuring spoons, kind of pans, and I just thought this was really cool. So that's my end papers that I put in. So far, then I have, so what I did is each, let me get this old one back out. Each tab looks like this. Oops, go back over there. So like this one's appliance cooking. I didn't add that in there actually. So let me go to appetizers and beverages. Okay, so this is what it looks like. It was, and it has your page numbers. Because I'm not keeping, the guts or all the pages to this book in the new junk journal, I will have it with it for when I go to sell it. It will go with the junk journal. But so what I did instead of this, and then the back side of the tab is the photo, and then the preceding page is the page that kind of goes along with it. So what I did was I took this preceding page and I glued them onto cardstock. So I glued it onto cardstock, and all I use is art glitter because it dries clear and it's permanent and it lasts. So I glued it onto cardstock, and then what I did is I cut and measured to fit over top of the this part here to cover this because it's really no longer needed. And it just kind of adds a nice picture to go along with the tab. And then the other side is the remaining part of the picture. So I went along and I did that, and I did an assortment of different types of pockets. So this one I cut a little, you know, a little half circle out of. This one I just did a folder type pocket with a little bit of scalloped edging. Half circle again with this one. And then this one I did kind of a corner pocket. Just different types of little angles and cuts. This one I did like a different type of punch that I had. So all of them are, you know, done like this. All of these salad dressings, meats, all different types of, you know, cuts. So that's what I've did so far to the actual tabbed pages. And then, so then I took all of my different scrapbooking cardstock, and I went along and I made a template for, I have two templates. So I made a template of just a straight page, like if I just wanted a flat straight page. And then I made a template for if I wanted to have a fold out page. So I made two templates. And then, so what I did was, first I went and I chose all of my cardstock and chose those and cut them to how I wanted them to look. And then which way I wanted them to fold out. So I picked a variety of cardstock, you know, different ones. And then I cut a V down here so that when it's folded, you know, because sometimes if it's just straight across and then you go to fold it, it's, you know, going to bunch up here and then make your fold kind of like, you know, kind of cockeyed, you know, and you don't want that. So you cut a V in it, and then I'll decide whether or not I want to glue this down, or if this is going to be a flip down, or however I'm going to do it. But I just went ahead and I picked all of my papers, and I haven't inked them up or anything yet. Some of these are already vintage looking. Some of these were in a card. It was like a set. You probably might recognize it. And then this is a different one. And then this one. So I made a whole bunch of pockets. Okay. So then what I started doing was going through all of my, if you've seen my vintage book hauls that I've did, and all the thrift store and garage sale and church sales that I've went through, you'll see where I find all of these wonderful books. And it's basically where I get all of my vintage photos and pictures. So, for instance, here's a Better Homes and Garden Holiday Cookbook. As you can see, I've already tore this apart. This is where I find all of my vintage, you know, pictures and, you know, like this here. Very cool, you know, pictures of old time, you know, cooking and whatnot. So this is where I get a lot of I have like a ton of cookbooks and different things. Here's Betty Crocker's The Boys and Girls Cookbook. I use this a lot because I love the vintage children's images in it and illustrations, and then the colors. So I have kind of dissected quite a few books. And what I've done then is I started, so this is a cardstock that I've already cut, just like these. And so then I have my open out. So this is what I'm going to do. So I have glued down. So here is some vintage from a vintage book. I think it's Childcraft. So it's just a vintage blue. And then here is apple juice recipe, and it shows a vintage picture. But this is a vintage cookbook. And I chose apple juice in this item because this is apples, and it'll probably be in the fruits and vegetables section of the cookbook. And then my next step will be to put on clear picture. And let me see if I have one handy. I probably should have had this out. So I have what do you call them? Photo albums, like this one here. I'll grab one. So like here's one, for example. This is just, you know, a photo album, and so I cut these out and I use these sleeves. I have this type, but then I also have, and I guess I don't have one handy because I've cut them all up, or most of them. But I have another one that is long. They're long, you know, it's in a big photo album. And they're like this, and they have the clear, and it wraps around, so it's both sides. So what I do is I cut that off, and it essentially is like this. It's two-sided, and it has the fold down here, but it's long, and you can cut them. So what I've done is I've cut them, and then what I do is I attach it to my page. I don't know if you can see this. So I attach it to my page where you can still see this wonderful background, but then also you can stick your, you know, recipe card in here if you want. You know, your card still fits in here. So if you don't have a card or a recipe in the you know, in this little pocket, like clear pocket, you still get to see this wonderful, you know, vintage pictures and illustrations and stories and recipes behind it. But otherwise you still, you know, it still looks really cool with that. So so that's where I'm at. And so that's what I'm starting to do, is take all my vintage papers and glue them onto my pockets. And then I will add lots of stuff to the outsides. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to start doing that to some of them that don't have inside. You know, it's not two-sided cardstock. This was one-sided, so I covered it up. But not all my cardstock has images in it. Most of these do right now, but I have more that do not have images, that are just one-sided. Okay, so then here's another one. So this one was just one-sided, you know, scrapbook cardstock. And so I wanted it, instead of folding in, I wanted it to fold out. So when you go through the book, you know, there's also a pocket on this side showing, and then there's an inside, and then there's a pocket on this side. So I'm folding my papers different, not all of the same. So, so then this one, get this straight here. So then this one I cut out of a vintage cookbook right here. This is Favorite Recipes of Leech Lake Area, and this is, I don't know if it actually had a date in here anywhere. Well, actually, it's, somebody gave it to somebody in 1971. So, but I liked it because it's typed, and it's all kinds of colored papers. So, so I've dissected that, and so I've put, I picked some recipes that I thought was cool, like rhubarb crumble, apple nut squares, so you can still see these recipes in their vintage. Behind it, when you save, you know, your recipes, you can, you know, stick them in there. So like here's a really old baked chicken supreme. This was a recipe that I found in one of those journals or, you know, cookbooks. And so, you know, if you write them down on a piece of paper, you've got a pocket to throw it in, but you can still see some nice recipes behind. Okay, so, and then this one, I made a pocket out of here, and this is an image from a cook's type magazine book, but it's not magazine, it's actually card paper. And then I sewed some fabric on this side, and then I just kind of randomly sewed around the edges. So that's two that I've done. And then here's another one. This one I chose to do folded out. So this was a one-sided cardstock. So here is a picture of a vintage kitchen and people cooking with their children. Just love that picture. And then here's forks and knives. This is a vintage, another vintage picture from a book. And then you've got that. So that's another one. And so then again, I'll put some clear photo album pockets on here so you can still see these wonderful pictures when you don't have anything in it. And so then this one, love this because it kind of matches the book, and it was one-sided cardstock also. So I took this really cool a picture of a red barn, and I think those look like poppies. So this was really nice. It came from a vintage book. And then here is some apple species. It talks about those, and that came out of a vintage book as well. And so I just kind of put them together so that, you know, you kind of have some nice view. So there's another one I did. And then this one, I kind of cut out because I liked the whole page, and it's thick. It's root vegetables, and I just kind of like the illustration of it. This is not vintage, although it's probably like maybe early 2000, you know, out of a cookbook type thing. And then it has a full recipe here in the back. Or is it a recipe? No, it's not actual full recipes. But I like this root vegetable, so I may cover this up. I'm not sure. I thought it was a recipe, but it's not. It's about the issue. So I have cut this, and so I'll probably attach something to that. So that's where I'm at in this retro cookbook. And so I have a whole ton of pages cut out, and I go through. Basically, I go through my all of my vintage books that I have, and they're not always cooking related. I do have like Popular Mechanics home handyman book, you know, just encyclopedias, just anything that I like the color theme that goes with the book and matches, or that I think is interesting to go into the cookbook. So like here. So these are just random pages that I've already cut out. I don't know if I'll use, or I will use them. This is from an Old Woman's Day Encyclopedia of Cookery. So here's some pages. Here's some cut-offs. The other half of that. Here's part of that recipe. I love this vintage little booklet cookbook, colors and how the bread recipes are on here. Here's another book page, and so I've took it out of the book. I just see these pages are already way browned around the edges, and I like that. Dips and dunks, I like that. Here is just a flower. This is not vintage, but this was out of a magazine, and I will put it on cardstock, and I just like the flowers. Here's another one, pork cuts. Because I just love the pinks in there. Here's another one from, I think, a Childcraft encyclopedia. Some doors slam shut. It's just kind of really cool image. And here's another vintage one. This is actually at a supermarket, about opening doors and how things work in a supermarket. So that's kind of cool. This one is skewered recipes, a mile-long sandwich. That sounds cool. So again, these are just, I just went through my cookbooks and kind of tore out pages that I thought was kind of cool and that really I thought was neat. This one's Austrian cooking. I just like this pink image here. So I'll use that. Here's another one, American Cookery, Encyclopedia of Cookery. This is kind of just an old one. Here on the back is Alabama, and here's like their dishes for that area. And again, just some random, you know, pictures that I find. I just cut out. Here's some old menus, and it's kind of like in this orange, 70s orange color. And then here is from an encyclopedia. I just like this exercise, this yellow background here. I'll use it for something, and these are kind of really thick cardstock type books. Here's some airline, some vintage airline pictures. Here is Man and Food, and so it talks about how tilling and planting for how they get your food, and then Man to Food and Story of the Harvest. And so these are some nice vintage pictures I will use. Doors that open by themselves. This is your supermarket doors. Kind of cool. These are really old vintage pictures. So that's just like part of my pile that I have. Excuse me. That I have working. And I also like these laminate trays. So these trays are kind of what I use for my collections of stuff. So like this is my tray. And when I find things, I just cut them out, and, you know, if I find pieces or scraps or anything that I'm going to use in my book, I put it in my tray and I work off my tray. So that's just a little tip on how I do it. And then also, while I'm working, if I'm in a book or cookbook that I see some really cool, you know, smaller images that I like, I take this little tray. It's kind of just a little plastic tray, and it has a little handle on it. I think maybe I got it at the dollar store, I'm not sure. But this is where, like, see, I found a TV dinner cutout of a 50s, I think, Time Life book. Here's Quaker, remember Mikey? He'll eat anything. Here's a bullet tail lights of an old vintage car. And so some of these I cut out and I put on back of cardstock, and I will turn them into some type of a card for the recipe cards. See, these are just all images from like a 50s magazine. These are cut-offs from when I made the pages, so I will turn them into you know, some types of cards. So I kind of keep this little one for all types of little things while I'm working. So if I want to thumb through and find something, you know, I can find it. Like here's some, you know, I don't even know what these are, but they remind me of the slides, projector slides. So I'm going to take some vellum or something and put around there and put these in the journals too. And then I have lots of these cards that I found. You know, just little pieces of cut off. I've made that into a card. Here's a image that I found in a magazine, and I didn't want to have to look for it again, so I cut it out. And I put it on this really old file index card, and it's really thick, really, really thick. I didn't do anything else with it yet, but I just glued them on there and put them in here. Here's a little journaling card I made. Here's a lady that's at an adding machine. And I just kind of put on this recipe. So, I mean, these are just kind of all little things that, you know, I have found along the way, and I just don't want to, you know, forget about them. So I kind of just make my pile because it's what I'm working on currently. So here's another one, a vintage, it's like cookies and bars, and I just put it onto a tab book and stuck it in here. And so, and then here's another one. Here's some, what do you call it, sewing patterns. And then I found these three pictures, or I mean these three canisters for cooking, and then I liked this with the cooks and this picture here, and then I just kind of put it on. So this will be a nice big recipe card to use in the journal. So I like all this vintage type stuff. So I just kind of keep this little caddy by me as I'm looking and thumbing through things. So those are kind of just all some little tips. You know, like, you know, here's some of the small rickrack that I found, some vintage ones. So I'll use those on cards. So I just kind of use my tray, and then I use my holder here, and then I have a tray here with like really small items and like little tiny cutoffs, and like little images and buttons and things like that that I can keep right here close. These are just kind of like little tear-offs for collaging. You know, here's some rickrack wrappers and just little tiny images that I find. And then here's all of my little material scraps that are color coded, or not color coded, but color based on the journal that I'm working on. So I have this tray here in front of me. So that's kind of my setup and how I'm working in this book. So I will make another video when I get a little bit more done. I usually don't video while I'm working because I have a dog, and I kind of work from home, and so I have to have my phone on and just kind of things like that. So it's kind of hard to you know, and I'm constantly in and out. So I only, you know, junk journal and work in my office here just a couple times, you know, a day or whatever. And there's sometimes just a short visit or whatever. So anyways, I will get this uploaded, and I can't wait to see how this all turns out. But that's my process so far, and hopefully maybe you've learned a few tips from me. So if you like my videos, subscribe and make any comments or ask me any questions if you want. I'd love to hear them and chat with you all. Okay, so thank you, and hopefully you all have a great day. Bye.